On this channel, I always talk about like games and entertainment, and I kind of briefly can't went over why games are either delayed, whether they come out broken, buggy, unplayable, right? Or they even come out in a odd state, like maybe part of the game functions, like the microtransaction store functions just perfectly, but other aspects of the game have completely flopped. And I came across his channel called Timothy Kane. He's the developer, or I think he's the creator of Fallout. And most of his videos is him just going over what happens in, game development, what happens in like, what the devs have to deal with, what the creators have to deal with, what artists have to deal with. And, I'm just going to have him, just going to comment on this video game development caution, because I think this is just a piece of the greater reason why games come out, get shoved back, come out buggy, broken, unplayable, or the release dates get pushed back over and over and over. And my personal opinion is because of being risk averse. So the company, the game, are just risk averse. So if they want to fix a bug, there's so many layers of bureaucracy you have to go through just to have that bug fixed, where it would, and people just refuse to be held accountable, right? Because again, in systems where you're not held accountable for anything, you can have just incompetence flourish, right? And it's either for ideological reasons, or hey, maybe the person who's incompetent just got hired on because based off nepotism. So I'll just let this guy do all the talking, and I'll have things to say with his points. I'll try not to pause every so often, but I mean, if I'm if I have something I gotta say, but then they move on to another point, and now I'm thinking about what he's saying again, sometimes ideas just get jumbled up. So let's just get it started.
Hi, everyone. It's me, Tim. Today, I want to talk about something that, for a lack of a better phrase, I'm going to call game development caution. Before I start, I'm going to tell you three different stories. They're a little different, but then I'll tell you what I'm thinking about. Back when we made Fallout, towards the end, when we were really trying to get it out, we had two whiteboards. One whiteboard had a list of features or content that weren't done yet that really needed to get in. And the other whiteboard had a list of what the 10 most egregious bugs were. And next to each one of these, on these two different whiteboards, were listed the person who was assigned to it. We did it in a whiteboard like this so that people could come in the morning and look at it, because this predated Jira or Confluence or anything like that. They could come in, look at the whiteboard, and go, oh, I see something I need to jump on. Worked fine. I don't think I heard any complaint about it. People liked getting stuff off of that. If they saw something that was like, I'm on that today. Tried doing the exact same thing 10 years later at Carbine. Overwhelmingly, people said, no, do not do that. I will quit if you do that. If I see my name on that whiteboard, I will quit. And I said, well, what if we don't put people's names next to it? I'll still quit. People will know it's me.
And the reason you have this is, again, because it is basic human nature not to be held accountable like it happens to me. Like there's times I don't want to be held accountable for things that I am absolutely at fault for, and it happens. Like this is just basic human nature, depending on the circumstance. Because again, if there are problems or if anything gets messed up, again, people know exactly who to turn to, you know, wag their finger at. And there are absolutely situations where it has to happen, even if people don't like being held accountable. Like if you're working at a studio, like Bethesda, or like the studio that they worked, Obsidian, that worked on the New Vegas and the early Fallouts. Like this is just something that has to exist, right? For the product to come out at best, because again you're demanding people's money, right? So it only makes sense to try to give them their money's worth. But and you don't need to be incompetent to like this. Like most people don't really enjoy this, but you'll understand if you're working a job. Okay, there are things that I'm held accountable to do, and most people accept this, unless you're hired on ideological nepotism, unless you're hired on by other forms of nepotism. Like it's the boss's son that's hired on, and he doesn't actually know how to get the job done, but he does, know the boss. Again, it's his son, and other people start to point this out, or if you just got the job, but it turns out, hey, you're not actually good at the job, and other people will call you out for this, and again, you see this in, situations with, I'm gonna go to ideological nepotism because that's primarily the problem with most gaming companies. It's like you use ideology as a shield to protect you, but again, then this is where incompetence thrive. This is where people who just do not know, and again, they delegate so fucking much that you can't pinpoint who is at fault. So yeah, I understand this. He's speaking it from I'm assuming like the coder perspective, right? But most incompetent people, or most people who do not like being held accountable for their work actions, they don't want a system like this because again, they can be called out. So yeah, I 100% believe that this is one of the issues.
Story 2. When we were making the Outer Worlds, I wanted to put in. This is probably end of year 2, so we're still a year away. The combat AI wasn't really in yet, so I asked for a very simple combat aggression code to be added. This is how simple it was. Every time an NPC got shot, they would see if that person was on the list of someone who'd shot them. If they weren't, they'd add them to the list, with the amount of damage they just took. If they were already on the list, they'd just add the amount of damage they took. Whenever they're deciding who to attack, they attack the person at the top of the list. That's it. That's all I wanted. Keep in mind, the advantage of that basic AI, you can make lots of changes later. You can make them that it has the one at the top of the list, if it's different than the person you're attacking, the damage has to exceed the damage of the person attacking you by a certain amount before you change targets. You can take distance into account. You can take whether you can reach them into account, whether you have a ranged weapon into account. All that comes later. That's all I wanted. It got put into the programmer production query queue and came back with an estimate of 4 weeks. I pushed back saying the code I asked for was very simple. I've written it before. Would take about 45 minutes. It's basically, there's already a callback when you get hit. That's when you look to put them on the list. And there's a callback. There's a call when you want to pick a target. That's when you look at the list and see which one you want to attack. That's it. The programmer who it got assigned to came to me and said, I need 4 weeks. And I'm like, why? Walk me through what you're going to do. And he goes, you don't understand. And I was like, I've coded this 3 times. Walk me through it. And he wouldn't. He left. He left angry. Lead programmer came back, started yelling at me, saying, if he says he needs 4 weeks, he needs 4 weeks. And I'm like, then I will do it. I'll have it done before lunch. And he said, no, because then people will have to support your code. I'm like, well, I'm going to walk you through what I want. And you tell me why this takes 4 weeks. He looked at what I wrote, which was about 10 lines of pseudocode on a whiteboard, and he goes, I'll come back. He came back about an hour later and said, what about 2 weeks? And I said, do I have any options here? Fine. 2 weeks. Story 3.
Yeah, and again, that's also the reason, because it's the bureaucracy. And again, to my knowledge with coding, right, you need to code in a way that, say, if another developer for whatever reason needs to refer back to your code, like it's made in a way that, just a standardized way that most coders will understand. Now the problem with that in industries is you have, this always goes back to ideology. It's like you have people that talk about inclusive coding, so you're supposed to remove words like whitelist, blacklist, or like master, slave. Like, these are standardized terms in coding, and the code is something you, the gamer, just does not see. You, the consumer, just does not see. So what the fuck does inclusive coding even mean? It's like, again, it's specifically there to fuck with the developer, because the consumer doesn't see the fucking code, right? It's specifically to fuck with the developer. And it's that, and there's just, again, levels of bureaucracy to get a simple line done, right? There's just levels of bureaucracy, and people need to check over, double check over, triple check over. And again, nothing can get done. Or it can get done, but in 2 or 4 weeks. Like, a job that you, again, like he said, can take just couple, 40 minutes, now takes 10 times that, because of the bureaucracy. Right?
And I talk about features all the time, whether it's dialogues or system mechanics or story setting. We get very into it. Our voices may be raised. We're jumping out of our chairs to draw things on whiteboards. We're pacing back and forth. I know I've mentioned this before, but Anthony Davis showed up at our door and said, you guys have to stop yelling. Everybody's getting nervous. It's like mom and dad are yelling at each other. Still don't know who he meant was mom, but we explained that's just us talking. We're not mad, but we're trying to piece apart exactly what to do, and we're getting into it.
Yeah, you're passionate about the project, and people that are passionate, they'll get angry, they'll raise their voice. This is 100% normal. If you care, you're going to get mad. You're going I care about games, I care about movies, I care about entertainment. So yeah, I'm mad when, say, The Acolyte fucking fails, or when Disney's trash, or when, Star Wars trash. Because I like entertainment. I like games. It's who I am, So yes, if you're interested into something, if it's your job, if it's your passion, yeah, you're going to raise your voice, and that's 100% fine.
So, what do those 3 stories have to do with each other? I'm starting to see in the industry, I shouldn't say starting, in the last decade, the last quarter of my career, I'm starting to see this rise of what I can only call development caution. An abundance of caution, of padding estimates, time estimates, of wanting to go around and check with a lot of people to see if something's okay, asking, should we do this? I'm not sure. Let's have a meeting. Frequently, People would want to have a meeting to discuss something, and those were the very people who would say, we have too many meetings, I can't get any work done. Now, caution can be a really good thing if it leads to less bugs, less stress. Also, I get the fact that because games cost more now, people are approaching it with this sense of caution, because you're not just going to be out a little bit of money, you're going to be out a lot of money if this game doesn't.
Yeah, games are fucking expensive.
The thing that worries me, though, is games can also be a lot worse because of caution. And everybody who's cautious kind of denies that. They're like, no, we're reducing bugs, we're increasing life work balance, people are less stressed. And I'm like, true, but you're also taking a lot less risk in a game, which in many games I think give them less charm. And yeah, even
I mean, yeah, you see this with indie games. You see this with games from, you know, other countries. Like, yeah, they're willing to take more risks as opposed to, you know, games from multi-billion-dollar companies, because that's what it takes. $300 million to make the Star Wars game. Like, you're going to make just the most, like, unrisky, the most, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Unoffensive product you can, just, you know, skirt or maybe around the ideological censorship, you know, around the censorship of other countries, and that's fine. But again, you're trying to sell art. Like, that's fine if you're trying to sell, you know, like a car part. But if you're trying to sell an art piece, I mean, there has to be someone with passion. There has to be someone willing to take the risk, right? There has to be, like, someone needs to take that helm. Otherwise, again, you just get a mass-produced product, and most people reject that, even in, like, cars, you know. But again, they're trying to mass-produce art. Like, with art, there has to be someone with a vision.
games that have jank have a lot of charm. My games have had jank. I know people talk about jank in other games. You know, things where the AI acts in a bizarre way in certain circumstances, or NPCs say weird things or do weird things. It can be charming. But things have changed, and I know games have gone from being an expression of an idea of like artwork from a particular person or group of people into a corporate driven money seeking instrument.
Yeah, exactly.
And I get it. There's a lot of money going into these. In a way, though, I would argue they always were. You always were making these with the idea that, you know, I hope it sells a lot, we make money. But now designs are being driven by this. That's why we have microtransactions. It's why we have pre-orders. It's why we have what we're starting to see lately, where games are, if you pay a little more, you can play it a few days or even a week early.
Yeah, and again, I think that's the problem, right? Back in, like, the Halo 2, Halo Combat Evolved days, right? They sold merchandise. So they sold figurines of the Arbiter or Master Chief 117. They sold, you know, artwork of Cortana, artwork of the Covenant, and, like, art. And that's how they offset the cost of games. And you see this with other popular franchises and other popular IPs to offset the massive cost. And I do believe the cost was justified, because you paid, it was a physical product, right? You had to get the disc. Now everything's digital, right? So you could argue it's even cheaper to make games nowadays, but they don't have faith in the product itself, and that's the problem, right? Either it's for ideological reasons or whatnot. They do not believe the product, or they, and okay, let me rephrase another way. People have lost faith. The consumer, the gamer, has lost faith in, like, Ubisoft, because people do not believe there's a single creative person at Ubisoft, or if they are, they have to heed to the ideological individuals that their entire worldview, their entire like way of interacting in the company is trying to get someone fired for mean tweets or saying mean things, right? It's the culture shift that happened, which is why, and again, if you're in a situation like that, the developers just treat it like any other job. They just work their 9 to 5, they get up and they go home and they see their family. But and that didn't used to be the case. People used to be passionate about video games, but that passion is completely dried up. Like they spent time, money, and effort to erode that passion. So, and the consumer is seeing this, which is why they're moving to other like entertainment from other nations. So, like again, Chinese, South Korean, Japan. They're moving like the consumer knows this is happening, even though if they can't articulate it, and the consumer is just moving subconsciously to other forms of entertainment. Now there's people. Now I know why it's happening, right? And I know why I'm moving, and I can articulate why I'm turning away from this industry or Western entertainment as a whole. But even if you can't, even if the consumer can't, it's like they know, right? And you're also not supposed to point this out because the same individuals that thrive off this grift will come after you. They'll try to get you fired, get you in trouble, cancel you because they're fighting this ideological battle against the things they don't like. And again, it's because of this people have turned away from Western entertainment.
Now, you can't always blame the publishers or the developers for this. If people didn't pay for it, they wouldn't do it. It's like spam. If everybody stopped answering spam tomorrow, it would go away. But because a tiny percentage does,
it's it's investors, it's the normies.
So I'm not really talking about the money-driven part. I'm talking about how the caution is dampening down the ideas. It's why I'm going to double down on this. I've always thought the indie space is a lot richer in ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Probably not
That's
money. Certainly not money. But they're much richer in ideas because they take less. They have less caution and take a lot more risk. And unfortunately, what I see then is AAAs that dip into indie games for features and ideas. By the way, it's not just publishers and developers that I see all this caution with. I've seen a huge rise in caution in game journalism.
Yep.
It's become the norm that no journalist wants to risk getting into an embargo situation where they're not given an early access code, so they can't write their reviews earlier than other people. They're worried about not being invited to press events or, junkets, I think they're called. So a lot of them have gone a lot more cautious in what they say. I really miss the reviews. I'll name a couple, like Scorpia in the 80s and 90s and Deathlock in the 90s and early 2000s. Because those two reviewers said what they thought.
Yeah.
If you put out a game, they'd skewer you for all the things that were wrong with it, but then they'd praise you for everything that's right with it. Now, it's sort of like, well, we really like this, but they don't want to really double down on it because it may be something people don't like. So, let's say a journalist loves the diversity in a game. He may go, well, I'm not going to say that much because I don't want to come across as being pandering, and also some people yell when you talk about that. So I just see a lot of the passion.
Yeah, and it's that, and again, the company wants you to effectively be the PR arm. And I've talked about this, how they will go to YouTubers and be like, look, this is what you're supposed to say. If there are any bugs, edit around it. Edit it out. And we've seen this with Shadows of War, right? The Lord of the Ring. I think it's Shadow. I keep calling it Shadows of War, like Shadows of Mordor or something. But yeah, we've seen the developers being like, okay, this is how you're supposed to talk about the game. You're supposed to not call out the bugs. And again, Angry Joe pointed this out. Total Biscuit point this out, and people see this. But then the problem with games journalists, and it always turns back around to ideology, right? I wish it wasn't the case, and I'm probably sound like a broken record, right? Because again, all the journalists, they even talk to like the HR ladies and the ideological individuals of Ubisoft, and what happens is, again, that they are unwilling to talk shit against these companies, even if the game's trash, against more, like, and specifically AAA Western companies that they will not talk against, and it's because they don't want to get blacklisted, and not get the early access. Right, this is why they don't talk to you, but they'll gladly talk crap about Black Myth Wukong, even if the market overwhelmingly likes the game, right? They don't care what the market, they don't care what gamers like. They care what the ideology demands, or if they say bad tweets online. That's what they care about, and again, the market unilaterally rejects this at every turn, even if they can't articulate why, and that's what we're seeing today.
Drain out of game journalism, and they're really just trying to go for what kind of review can I write that generates the most clicks. And I guess this worries me, because if I see this everywhere, if I see this in publishers and developers and now new people entering the industry, they don't have this passion anymore. Yeah. So what's the moral of all this? I want to tell people, just go and make it. Make what you want. You don't need a committee to sign off on it. You can always go back and change it, or if you make something and it turns out not to be good at all and unsalvageable, throw it away. But that rapid iteration to get to some really good idea is a lot better than just being so cautious that you basically creep up to a very mundane game that doesn't show any kind of passion in its development. Mm-hmm. People can tell. So I started with stories. Let me end with those 3 stories and how they kind of got resolved. So I didn't even try to do the whiteboard solution when I made Outer Worlds. What I did is I made my own Confluence page called, like, it was Tim Kane's top 10 or something. It was in my Confluence space, and I wrote, here are the 10 biggest things I want looked at this week. And there were a few producers who would look at that page all the time. What was great about this solution, nobody could come and complain to me about it.
Yeah.
Because it was in my Confluence space. My own personal, but public, Confluence space. Also, I'd like to point out that anybody could go to Jira at any time and say, what are the 10 most highly prioritized bugs, and who are they assigned to? So we already had that whiteboard virtually, but somehow it was okay that it wasn't called attention to.
Yeah.
For the combat aggression code, I think I settled on 2 weeks, and I think it got done faster than that. Great, I got it. I don't think I asked for anything after that. I didn't go and specifically ask for anything, because I realized that I was being viewed as some sort of ogre when I knew something could be done faster, and there was no solution to it, which is why years ago I started thinking, ooh, this is becoming a problem. Same thing with Leonard and I yelling at each other. We just kept doing it. We're like, it's our office, we'll shut the door, we're not mad at each other, but this is the way we get things done. Noted that some people don't like it. We won't get things done like that with you. And let me tell you, I think there were people who felt like they missed out on not being parts of those conversations. Some people would come over. Charlie had his office right next door, and he was the lead designer on Outer Worlds, and he would come in sometimes and join in. Great. Other people didn't do that. You missed out. And I think you missed out on some really fun, active, engaging conversations about game development.
Yeah.
But that's the way things are going. So.
And again, if you have passion about that thing or about, your job, you would want to be part of that. Like, it would be a good thing. You want to have your mark on the piece of art that is being made by your company. But they, unfortunately, nowadays they just don't think like that, and you're not allowed to think like that. They want people to shut the hell up and just be a working drone. Like, this is what people want. Like, they don't want people that think for themselves or have an opinions outside of the accepted opinion, because if you do, you get Gina Carano'd, right? If you work for Disney, like say Disney, they have their hand up your ass and they play you like a fucking fiddle. And that's what people want.
I'm not sure I have a great solution other than people, reminding people to be passionate. But I just kind of want to talk about this because it kind of ties into bigger teams and longer development time. And
yeah, games and
bigger
game
budgets.
Development
Just this
as a
whole game development caution that's rising up in the industry. So there, got that off my chest.
Yeah, I mean, oh my god, and yeah, that's you know, that's just one facet. Oh wait, the game development caution too. I'll make this another video. That's just one facet of it, right? You know, and the ideology is just this veil that's artificially placed over to justify these things. But again, being risk averse is the issue. You know, people want to know if the product actually has soul behind it. Because if the developer doesn't care, it's like, okay, so why should I care? Right? Why should I spend my hard-earned money on this if the developers themselves, they don't care? Oh hell, not even that. They hate me as the consumer. They want to do everything in their power to spite me. It's like, why would I put any amount of money towards this art or towards this? You know, and I think people are now more people are now figuring out. They're asking the question of why. But anyway, I mean, that's all I gotta say about this. Peace.